I didn't know a life could disappear so quietly. There was no argument, no slammed doors, no warning signs flashing red in my face that day. I came home from work expecting the usual. His shoes kicked off near the entryway, the faint smell of coffee he never finished, the low hum of the apartment feeling lived in. Instead, the silence felt staged. Not peaceful, vacant. My bag slid from my shoulder onto the floor as I walked farther in. The living room looked edited, cleaner than normal, too intentional. My chest tightened before my brain caught up, like my body already knew what my mind was about to confirm. The bedroom did it. His side of the closet was gone. Not messy gone, not rushed gone, erased. The hangers I'd bought him still lined up neatly, empty. His dresser drawers, open, hollow. Even the framed photo of us from last summer was missing, the dust outline still faint on the shelf like a ghost of what used to be there. My phone buzzed. One text. No hello, no explanation that sounded like him. I moved out. I need space to work on myself. My friend helped me see that I've been losing who I am in this relationship. Please don't contact me. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I read it twice. Then again, slower, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that hurt less. We were together for years. We were building toward marriage. He wore the ring like it meant something. We talked about venues, guest lists, where we'd spend holidays. And he left me through a message written like a therapy exercise. I called him. Straight to voicemail. Texted back. Nothing. My fingers hovered over his name, shaking now, not with hysteria, but with shock so deep it felt unreal. Then the line that kept echoing in my head landed again. My friend helped me see. His best friend. The same man who'd been around more lately. The one I'd tried not to worry about. Coffee check-ins. Long phone calls that ended after midnight. Emotional conversations I was told not to question. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space where his things used to be, and something inside me went very still. He wanted space. Fine. But I wasn't going to wait in limbo while someone else rewrote our relationship behind my back and expected me to stay exactly where he left me. That night I stopped reacting, and I started deciding. I met him during a season of my life that felt quietly unfinished. Not broken, not dramatic, just paused. I had my routines, my work days, my carefully built independence. I wasn't looking to be saved, and he didn't arrive like some whirlwind romance either. He was steady, polite in a way that felt intentional. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke at first, who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. We started slow. Coffee after work turned into dinners that stretched longer than planned. Texts became phone calls. Phone calls became the comfortable kind of silence where neither of us felt the need to fill the space. He told me about his childhood, about always feeling like the responsible one, the emotional translator in his family. I told him about my tendency to carry more than I should, about how I'd learned early not to rely on anyone too fully. Somewhere between those confessions, we chose each other. The relationship grew in a way that felt adult. We didn't rush. We talked about money, expectations, future stressors before they happened. When we moved in together, it wasn't impulsive. It was practical. He was honest about his credit issues, about needing time to stabilize financially. I agreed to take on more of the rent because my income was higher, because partnership, at least to me, meant supporting each other through uneven seasons. And for a long time, it worked. I helped where I could, covered utilities, added him to my phone plan to save money, put his therapy co-pays on my card when he said it was helping him work through some stuff. I didn't keep score because love isn't supposed to feel transactional when you believe you're building something permanent. He told me often how grateful he was, that I made him feel safe, that our life felt stable, that I grounded him. Looking back, that word, stable, comes back in a different light. The proposal happened quietly, the way we did most things. No crowd, no spectacle, just us. He gave me the ring, with hands that trembled slightly, eyes earnest. I remember thinking how right it felt, how calm, how grown. I said yes without hesitation. Wedding planning was never chaotic, but it did introduce pressure. Guest lists meant family opinions. Budgets meant uncomfortable conversations. He started a new job that didn't immediately feel like the right fit. Therapy became more frequent. He talked a lot about identity, about wanting to make sure he didn't lose himself in adulthood. That's when his best friend became more present. He'd always been there, someone from college, familiar, trusted. I didn't feel threatened at first. They'd known each other long before me. Shared history. Inside jokes I didn't need access to. I believed in boundaries and didn't see friendship as competition. But the frequency changed. Coffee meetups became routine. Processing calls stretched for hours. Late-night texts buzzed my phone while we were watching something together. When I asked casually, "Hey, you two have been talking a lot lately. Everything okay?" He smiled, brushed it off. "He just gets me," he said. "It helps to talk things out." I wanted to be supportive. I told myself it was healthy for him to have outside perspectives, that I didn't need to be everything for my partner. So I adjusted. I stepped back when he needed space. I trusted. I didn't realize I was slowly being removed from my own relationship while someone else narrated it for him. By the time I noticed the shift, the emotional distance, the way wedding conversations stalled, the defensiveness when I asked questions, the groundwork had already been laid. I just didn't know yet how completely. The first warning sign wasn't loud. It didn't come with accusations or raised voices or anything dramatic enough to demand immediate action. It arrived quietly, disguised as self-work, wrapped in language that sounded healthy and mature. He started therapy. At first, I was relieved. I'd encouraged it, even helped pay for it when his insurance lagged. I believed in growth. I believed in learning how to communicate better, especially with a wedding on the horizon. When he came home from sessions thoughtful and subdued, I gave him space. When he said he was tired afterward, emotionally drained, I picked up slack without complaint. But slowly, therapy became a shield. Any concern I raised was suddenly met with language that felt rehearsed. "You're making this about you. I'm learning to set boundaries. My therapist says I need to listen to my own voice more." Those phrases landed oddly, like they didn't quite belong to him. They didn't sound like discoveries. They sounded like conclusions handed to him by someone else. And every time that happened, his best friend's name hovered in the background. Not spoken directly, but implied. He was around constantly now, not physically in our space, but ever present through screens. Calls that stretched long enough for dinner to go cold. Texts he stepped into the other room to answer. When I asked what they talked about, he'd shrug. Just processing stuff. Processing what exactly? Our relationship hadn't been volatile. We didn't fight explosively. We didn't insult each other or cross obvious lines. If anything, our life was steady, predictable, maybe even boring in the way long-term commitment sometimes is. That's when the narrative began to shift. He started describing moments differently than I remembered them. Suddenly, my questions were control. My check-ins were monitoring. My financial support was framed as power imbalance. I remember sitting across from him one night, watching his jaw tighten as he spoke, his tone defensive before I'd even finished a sentence. "You're doing that thing again," he said. "What thing?" I asked, genuinely confused, making me feel guilty for wanting space. I'd asked if we could plan dinner together that weekend. That was it. I brought up the frequency of his conversations with his best friend once, carefully, choosing my words like glass. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "You and him have been talking a lot lately. I just want to make sure everything's okay." The shift was immediate. His posture stiffened, his eyes hardened. "Why are you jealous?" "I'm not," I said. He's my best friend. We talk about everything. This is exactly the kind of thing he warned me about." That sentence landed wrong. Deeply wrong. He warned me. Warned him about what? Me? I let it go that night. Told myself I didn't want to be the kind of woman who policed her partner's friendships. I told myself trust meant swallowing discomfort sometimes. But the distance kept growing. Wedding planning stalled. Conversations about the future turned vague. He stopped using we when he talked about what was coming next. Instead, everything became I need and I'm figuring things out. And all the while, someone else was helping him define the problem. Not through conflict, not through facts, but through suggestion. By the time I felt the unease settle fully in my chest, the story of our relationship had already been reframed, without my voice in it. And I was just beginning to realize that the real threat wasn't silence. It was influence. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon, 4:47 p.m. I remember the time because I was still at my desk, half listening to a meeting that suddenly faded into background noise when my phone vibrated. I glanced down, expecting something normal. "What do you want for dinner?" or "running late?" Instead, it was one long block of text. No greeting, no soft landing. I moved out. I need space to work on myself. My friend helped me see that I've been losing who I am in this relationship, Please don't try to contact me. I'll reach out when I'm ready. For a full minute, I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe properly. My coworkers' voices blurred together as my pulse thudded in my ears. It felt unreal, like reading someone else's breakup, not my own. Like this couldn't possibly be about the life I'd just left that morning. Our apartment, our bed, our future. I called him immediately, straight to voicemail. Texted back, "What are you talking about? Where are you?" No response. I left work early, my hands tight around the steering wheel the entire drive home. Every red light felt like a delay I didn't consent to. When I opened the apartment door, the silence confirmed what the text already had. Half the apartment was gone. Not random things, not forgotten items. His clothes, his shoes, his toiletries, the drawer where he kept documents, empty. The nightstand where his phone used to charge, bare. The dresser we bought together last year, after debating cost versus quality, now split cleanly down the middle. His half was wiped. I stood there, bag still on my shoulder, and felt something crack, not loudly, but decisively. I called him again. Voicemail. I called his mother next, panic finally edging into my voice. She sounded just as confused as I was. "What do you mean he moved out?" she asked. "He didn't say anything to me." That was when the cold realization settled. If he didn't tell his own family, this wasn't impulsive. It was planned. So I called the person who clearly knew what was happening. His best friend answered on the first ring. "Hey," I said, skipping pleasantries. "Where is he?" "He's safe," the friend replied calmly. Too calmly. "He just needs time to figure things out without your influence." I actually laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "My influence?" I said. "We're engaged. We live together. What are you talking about?" "I've been helping him see some patterns," he continued. "The way you guilt him about spending time with friends, how you always need to know where he is. That kind of control isn't healthy." My hand tightened around the phone. "I asked him once why you two were talking so much," I said. "Once." "That's exactly what toxic people say," he replied smoothly. "He's staying with me for now. Give him space." Then the line went dead. I stood there in the middle of the living room, phone still pressed to my ear, heart racing. Not from loss anymore, but from anger sharpening into clarity. He was staying with him. The same man who'd been framing me as controlling. The same man who'd been whispering in his ear for months. I sank onto the couch and sat there for nearly an hour, staring at nothing, replaying every conversation, every moment I'd dismissed as harmless. Then something inside me shifted. He wanted space. Fine. I opened my laptop. By 7 p.m., I'd called a locksmith. New locks installed by 9:00 p.m., $280 charged to my card. I removed him from my phone plan, canceled his gym membership, the one I'd paid for as a birthday gift, opened our shared expense spreadsheet, the one I'd kept updated because I was organized like that. I calculated everything I'd covered over the past year while he worked part-time and found himself. Rent difference, utilities, streaming services, his car insurance, groceries, date nights, therapy copays. The total came to just over $18,000. I drafted an itemized invoice, clean, professional, clear. Then I added a note. Since your best friend knows what's best for your well-being and living situation, I'm sure he can assist with these expenses going forward. Attached is what I covered this past year. Best of luck on your journey of self-discovery. I sent it to both of them. Then I ordered dinner and sat alone in the quiet apartment I had just reclaimed. Weirdly calm. That calm wouldn't last, for them. The phone rang the next morning. His name lit up the screen like nothing had changed, like he hadn't erased himself from our life less than 24 hours earlier. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering, my body strangely steady, my heartbeat slow and deliberate. "You changed the locks?" he said the moment I picked up. "Yes," I replied. One word. Clean. Controlled. "You can't do that," he snapped. "That was my home." "Was," I corrected. "You moved out. You texted me that you needed space. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end, sharper now, like he hadn't expected resistance. "I just needed time," he said. "You didn't have to take it this far." "You packed your things," I said evenly. "You left. You're staying with your friend." "What exactly do you need the apartment for?" "My name is on the lease," he said, grasping for ground. "It's not," I replied. "I signed it alone because your credit wasn't good enough, remember? You were going to be added later. We just never got around to it." Silence, long enough that I knew he was replaying that conversation in his head, realizing he no longer had the leverage he assumed he did. "You're being petty," he finally said. I'm being practical, I answered. You wanted independence. This is what it looks like. I can't afford to live with him long term, he said, voice tight now. His apartment is tiny. That sounds like something to talk through with your therapist, I replied. Or with him, since he helped you see so clearly. I hung up before he could respond. That was when the narrative shifted. By that evening, his best friend started calling. I didn't answer. At 11 p.m., he left a voicemail, his voice sharp with outrage. You can't just kick him out and demand money, he said. That's financial abuse. This is exactly the toxic behavior I warned him about. I listened once, then deleted it. I texted back calmly. He left voluntarily. He's staying with you voluntarily. I'm no longer subsidizing his lifestyle voluntarily. Simple math. Then I blocked the number. The next few days were a blur of escalating pressure. He texted apologies that weren't really apologies. I miss you so much. Can we please talk? You're right, I should have communicated better. I can't believe you're doing this over one mistake. Then came the line that made my jaw clench. My friend said you'd react exactly like this. He knows you so well. Even while apologizing, he was still validating the man who dismantled our relationship. I replied once, when you're ready to take full responsibility without blaming me or crediting your friend's insight, let me know. Until then, enjoy your space. Day 3, his best friend showed up at my door, pounding, hard enough that neighbors definitely heard. I watched through the peephole, arms crossed, heart steady. Open up, he shouted. We need to talk like adults. There's nothing to talk about, I called back through the door. He made his choice. He's crying every night, the friend yelled. He misses you. He just needed time to process his feelings. He has plenty of time now, I said, and space. Exactly what he asked for. You're being childish, he snapped. Relationships take compromise. You're right, I replied. I compromised for a year while funding his life. Now it's your turn. That's when he kicked the door. Once. Hard. I caught it all on this camera, sent the footage to the landlord, saved a copy for myself. Then the truth slipped out. I can't afford to support him, the friend shouted. I'm between jobs right now. There it was. The man who positioned himself as emotional savior couldn't handle the reality of actual responsibility. Sounds like something you should have considered, I said calmly, before playing therapist. He left after another few minutes of yelling. I didn't care who heard. By then, the shock was gone. What remained was clarity. They didn't want independence. They wanted the benefits of my stability without my presence. And I was done providing both. A week after he moved out, the situation stopped being surreal and crossed into something else entirely. Something louder, messier, more entitled. By day 5, his messages shifted tone again. The apologies softened into bargaining, then slid quietly into blame. I can't believe you're doing this over one mistake. You're proving my friend was right about you. This didn't have to get so extreme. Every text carried the same contradiction. He was sorry, but I was still the problem. He missed me, but I was being unreasonable. He wanted space, but not consequences. I didn't respond. Day 6, his mother called. She'd always been kind to me, warm, the type of woman who hugged a second too long and meant it. When I answered, I could hear the strain in her voice before she even spoke. Honey, what's going on? She asked gently. He's saying you kicked him out. I closed my eyes for a moment, keeping my voice steady. He moved out voluntarily, I said. He texted me that he needed space. I changed the locks on an apartment he isn't on the lease for. A pause. He said you sent his friend a bill. I sent them both an itemized list of what I covered financially this past year, I replied. Since his friend believes he's better equipped to support his emotional and physical well-being, I assumed he'd want to help with the costs. Another pause, longer this time. How much? She asked quietly. Just over $18,000. She inhaled sharply. Oh my God, she murmured. I didn't realize you were covering that much. Neither did he, I said. He was too busy finding himself. She sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. Look, he's my son, and I love him, she said carefully. But he's always been easily influenced. That friend of his has been whispering in his ear for months. I told him that man had feelings for him. I figured, I replied. You're really not going to take him back? She asked. He didn't just leave, I said. He let someone convince him I was abusive or controlling without ever talking to me about it. He walked out and expected everything to be waiting when he changed his mind. I understand, she said softly. I'm sorry. You deserve better. That call lingered with me longer than I expected. Not because it changed my mind, but because it confirmed I wasn't imagining things. By day 7, the friend tried again. Different number this time. I answered because I didn't recognize it. He's falling apart, the friend said immediately. Crying constantly, not eating. This is on you. I let out a quiet breath. Interesting, I replied. He seemed perfectly capable of making major life decisions without me. I thought I could help him, he insisted. I thought he was unhappy. You thought you had a shot, I said calmly. And now you're realizing you can't afford the consequences. That's not fair, he snapped. It's exactly fair, I replied. You convinced him to blow up his life. Now you're stuck with the fallout and you're broke. He needs you, the friend said. He shouldn't have left. You're right, I said. He shouldn't have. Silence. Then he tried a new angle. I messed up, he admitted. I let my feelings cloud my judgment. Can you just talk to him? I'll back off completely. I laughed once, softly. So when you thought you had a chance, I was toxic, I said. Now that reality hit and you're stuck with the bill, suddenly I'm reasonable. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I replied. He wasn't a romantic project. He was a responsibility, and now you don't want it. He hung up. That same day, I woke up to 23 texts from my ex. Long paragraphs. Apologies layered over blame. Admissions followed by justifications. One moment he claimed his friend manipulated him. The next, he insisted the concerns were still valid, just poorly handled. I responded once, You left. Actions have consequences. I am not your safety net. 2 weeks after he moved out, the entitlement reached a new level. I found out because he called me from a coffee shop, sobbing so hard I almost didn't recognize his voice. He kicked me out, he said. What? I asked flatly. He said I was too much to handle, he continued, that I was too depressing, that he couldn't deal with my emotional needs. I said nothing. I have nowhere to go, he cried. My parents' place is full. My brother and his kids are staying there. I can't afford my own place yet. And then quietly, I thought you'd understand. Understand what? I asked. That the man who convinced you I was terrible turned out to be exactly who I warned you about? I said. Please don't confuse irony with accountability. He begged. Just a few weeks. He'd sleep on the couch. He'd stay out of my way. I said no. Hung up. I felt like trash for about an hour afterward. Then I reread the text he sent me about losing himself in our relationship and felt less bad. The next escalation came fast. He showed up at my work. Security called me down, their voices professional but cautious. There's a man in the lobby demanding to see you, they said. That's my ex, I replied. He's not authorized. They escorted him out. I left through the back entrance. That night, I found his best friend sitting on the steps outside my building. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, defeated. I screwed up, he said. No kidding. I really thought I was helping him, he admitted. I thought you were making him smaller. You saw an opportunity, I replied, and convinced yourself you were the hero. He looked exhausted. He's a lot, he admitted. The crying, the neediness, the constant reassurance. I lasted 9 days. I lasted 3 years, I said, because I loved him. He didn't argue. The pressure kept mounting. Calls, messages, family involvement. Everyone wanted me to fix what they didn't want to deal with. And that was when I realized something critical. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about who would absorb the consequences. And I was done volunteering. The quiet after the chaos was worse than the noise. Once the calls slowed and the messages stopped coming in rapid waves, I was left alone with the weight of everything that had happened. No one banging on my door, no unfamiliar numbers, lighting up my phone, just the apartment, too still, too empty, echoing in a way it never had before. That was when it hit. Not the anger, not the clarity, the grief. I sat on the edge of the couch one night, lights off, city glow slipping through the blinds, and felt it settle into my chest like something heavy and final. This wasn't about whether I'd done the right thing. I knew I had. This was about mourning the version of my life I'd believed in, the one where commitment meant something solid, where effort was mutual, where I wasn't quietly carrying more than my share without realizing it. I replayed moments I'd brushed past before. The way he'd sigh when I asked about wedding plans. The way he flinched when I brought up budgets. The way he'd started using therapy language like armor instead of insight. I wondered how long he'd been halfway gone before he ever left. That night, for the first time since the text, I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just tears slipping down silently as I stared at the empty space where his shoes used to be. My hands trembled in my lap, breath uneven, heart pounding not from panic, but from exhaustion. I felt foolish. Not because I loved him, but because I believed love alone would be enough to carry someone who didn't know how to stand on their own. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe I had been too firm. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe locking the door wasn't strength, it was avoidance. That thought lingered just long enough to hurt. Then I remembered his text. Don't contact me. I'll reach out when I'm ready. The certainty returned. He didn't ask for conversation. He didn't ask for repair. He chose distance and expected access without accountability. And the darkest realization came quietly, without drama. If I had let him come back that first time, crying, apologizing, displaced, I would have taught him that abandoning me had no real cost. That I would always be there to catch him. The loneliness sharpened after that. Friends checked in, but I didn't have the energy to explain the whole story. Work became mechanical. Meals were forgettable. Nights stretched longer than they used to, and sleep came in fragments. Sometimes I'd wake up reaching for a phone that didn't buzz anymore. I missed the routine. I missed the shared jokes. I even missed the version of him I now knew wasn't real. That was the hardest part. Grieving someone who was still alive, but fundamentally not who I thought he was. One evening I found the ring. Not because I was searching for it. It was tucked in the back of a drawer where I'd placed it without thinking after everything fell apart. I held it in my palm, cool and unfamiliar, and felt the ache hit harder than before. This had been a promise. And now it was just proof of how easily promises can dissolve when someone else convinces you they're a victim. I didn't put it on. I didn't throw it away either. I placed it back where it belonged, in the past. That night, lying in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, I realized something that hurt almost as much as the breakup itself. The man I loved didn't just leave. He let someone else define who I was to him. And no amount of love could compete with a story he wanted to believe. That was my lowest point, not because I wanted him back, but because I finally accepted that the life I planned was never as mutual as I thought. And accepting that meant letting it die completely. The turning point didn't come with an apology that fixed anything. It came with pressure, the kind that tries to corner you into becoming the solution again. His parents called a few days later, both of them, on speaker. I knew before answering that this wasn't about concern, it was about damage control. His father spoke first, voice formal, measured. "We need to talk about the situation." "I'm not your future daughter-in-law anymore," I said calmly. "We're not engaged." His mother cut in immediately. "Don't be like that. We've always thought of you as family. Family doesn't abandon family over some friend's opinion." I stayed quiet for a second, then spoke evenly. "He didn't leave because of an opinion," I said. "He packed his things and walked out without a conversation." "He made a mistake," his mother insisted. "A big one, but you're being cruel now. He has nowhere to go." "He had somewhere," I replied. "He chose to leave it." "You're punishing him," she said. "I'm not punishing anyone," I answered. "I'm just not fixing it." The line went silent. Then his father sighed, not angrily, not emotionally, tired. "He's staying in a hotel right now," he said, "putting it on his credit card. He can't afford that for long." "Then he should stay with you," I said. Another pause. Longer. "Our house is small," his mother said. "His brother and the kids are already there." "So you do have space," I said gently. "You just don't want to deal with him either." No one contradicted that. That was the moment everything locked into place. Everyone wanted me to absorb the consequences because I always had. Because I was organized, stable, capable. Because when I carried things, they disappeared quietly. "I funded his life for a year," I said. "Covered rent differences, utilities, therapy, insurance. And the second someone told him I was toxic, he walked out. And now I'm selfish for not taking him back?" His mother said it anyway. "You're being selfish." I didn't flinch. "You're right," I said. "I am." That stopped them. "I'm choosing myself," I continued, "and I'm done apologizing for it." They started arguing with each other in the background. His father told her to stop. Then he came back on the line, alone. "You're right," he said quietly, "about all of it. We should be handling this. We just didn't want to." We ended the call civilly. His mother never apologized. 2 days later, I got an email from him. Not frantic, not emotional, just long, detailed, careful. For the first time, there was no blaming language, no mention of his friend, no reframing of events, just acknowledgement. He admitted he'd been bored, that our life was stable and good, and he confused stability with stagnation, that outside voices gave him a narrative that felt easier than admitting he was restless and immature. He didn't ask to get back together. He asked to stay in the spare room for 30 days, offered rent, promised to stay out of my way, said he needed a stable place to reset. I didn't answer immediately. I sat with it for 2 days. Talked to my brother, my therapist, a coworker who'd lived through something similar. Every conversation landed in the same place. Letting him stay would erase the lesson. My brother said it cleanest. If you give him a soft place to land, you become the safety net again, and he learns nothing. That settled it. I replied to the email carefully. I appreciate you taking responsibility. But no, you don't get to use my space as a transition zone. You made your choices. Now live with them. Figure it out like the independent person you said you needed to be." He called immediately. I didn't answer. A message followed. Short, controlled, no begging, no tears, just pressure. I'm out of options. I put the phone face down. And in that moment, something shifted permanently. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. Saying no wasn't cruelty. It wasn't punishment. It was the first boundary I held without softening it to make someone else more comfortable. That was the real turning point, not when he admitted fault, but when I refused to carry it for him anymore. Once I said no, the noise didn't stop, but it changed. It lost its emotional leverage and became logistical, practical, ugly in a way that doesn't ask for sympathy. He didn't call again after that last message. Instead, the fallout reached me sideways, through other people and unintended encounters, evidence of what happens when a life built on borrowed stability suddenly has to stand on its own. The first thing I heard was that the hotel arrangement ended. Not dramatically, not with an argument. He simply ran out of room on his credit card. The front desk stopped extending nights. That was it. No scene. Just a hard limit he couldn't negotiate around. He bounced between short-term fixes after that. A couple of nights on a friend's couch. A week at a coworker's place that ended quietly when the arrangement stopped working. No one fought with him. No one yelled. They just opted out. People do that when responsibility arrives uninvited. His best friend disappeared from the picture entirely, packed up and moved back to his parents' place in another state before the consequences he'd been outrunning caught him. The between jobs situation turned out to be exactly what it usually is. He'd been fired. Performance issues, missed deadlines, eviction notice pending. He left before any of that became official. The irony didn't escape me. The man who positioned himself as the enlightened guide vanished the moment accountability showed up. A mutual friend told me later that my ex tried reaching out to him for help. The messages went unanswered, then blocked. That pattern repeated. The next update came from work. He'd taken a full-time job at a call center, not because it aligned with his passions or self-discovery goals, but because it was immediate income. He hated it. The schedule, the scripts, the fact that no one cared how he felt as long as he showed up on time and did the work. That was new for him. He applied for several roommate situations. Didn't get any of them. Not enough savings. Couldn't cover first and last month's deposit. Credit still shaky. Eventually, his parents took him in, with conditions. He had to contribute to groceries, handle all household cleaning, follow their rules. No late nights, no processing days, no emotional center of attention privileges. At 29, he was back in his childhood bedroom. I didn't feel satisfaction when I heard that. Just a quiet confirmation. Meanwhile, my life kept moving in ways that felt almost unfair in contrast. Work became easier, not because the workload changed, but because I wasn't managing someone else's emotional weather anymore. I got a promotion the following month. My focus sharpened when it stopped being split between my career and keeping a grown man afloat. The apartment felt different too. Calmer, lighter, mine. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I didn't jump into another relationship to prove anything. I let the quiet exist without apologizing for it. 2 weeks after everything settled, his father called. He asked if I wanted to get coffee. I almost said no, but curiosity won. We met at a diner, neutral territory. He looked tired in the way people do when they've stopped pretending everything's fine. "I need you to understand something," he said after we sat down. "This situation forced clarity." Then he told me something I hadn't expected. He and his wife were separating. Not because of one fight, not because of me, but because this exposed a pattern they'd been ignoring for years, enabling, smoothing over, outsourcing responsibility. "We wanted you to take him back so we wouldn't have to face it," he admitted. "I see that now." "I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to." He apologized again, paid for breakfast, gave me his number in case I ever needed anything. Good man, bad system. The final message from my ex came weeks later. Not asking for help, not asking for forgiveness, just acknowledgement. He admitted he'd been bored. That stability felt empty to him because he didn't know how to build meaning without chaos. That he mistook consistency for confinement. That outside voices didn't manipulate him. They gave him permission to act on impulses he already had. He wrote that he was living under his parents' rules now, working a job he disliked, starting from near zero. No dramatics, no tears, just reality. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, because responding would have given him something. Closure, validation, a sense of connection. And the entire point was that he no longer got anything from me. The real consequence wasn't the locked doors or the invoice or the refusal. It was this. I moved on. And he had to live with the life he chose without me absorbing the impact. My life didn't transform overnight. There was no dramatic reinvention montage, no sudden glow-up fueled by spite. What happened instead was quieter and far more permanent. I stopped managing chaos that wasn't mine. The apartment stayed mine. The routines became mine again. Mornings were calmer without emotional landmines disguised as processing. Evenings felt longer, not heavier. I didn't realize how much mental space I'd been giving away until I had it back. A month after everything settled, I caught myself laughing alone in the kitchen at something stupid on my phone, and noticed it felt natural, unforced, not the performative kind of okay I'd been practicing before. Work rewarded the focus I finally had. I'd been promoted, yes, but more importantly, I trusted myself again. My decisions didn't feel reactive, they felt aligned. I started seeing someone new casually. Nothing serious, no future promises, just someone steady, emotionally self-sufficient, who paid his own bills and didn't mistake calm for control. The contrast wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. And that's when the final clarity arrived. What I lost wasn't a partner. It was a role I never agreed to play. Provider, emotional regulator, safety net, villain in someone else's self-discovery arc. I didn't ruin his life. I didn't punish him. I didn't abandon him. I simply stopped cushioning his choices. And when I did, reality stepped in to do what I'd been shielding him from for years. The most uncomfortable truth I learned was this. If someone can be convinced you're toxic without ever talking to you, the relationship was already standing on borrowed ground. Love doesn't require you to disappear so someone else can find themselves. Growth doesn't come from outsourcing accountability. And boundaries aren't cruelty, just because they're inconvenient. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. But I also don't miss him. I feel relieved. Relieved I didn't marry into a dynamic where I was expected to absorb everyone's discomfort just to keep things smooth. Relieved I found out before children, before mortgages, before my life was any harder to untangle. The real ending isn't that he suffered. It's that I stopped. Stopped explaining. Stopped fixing. Stopped waiting to be chosen by someone who already left. He wanted freedom from my so-called toxicity. He got it. And I finally got something better than closure. I got my life back. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me. Not because this was entertaining, but because stories like this are uncomfortable in a way that matters. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning. And it definitely wasn't about proving who was right. It was about what happens when you stop absorbing consequences that don't belong to you. If you've ever been told you were too controlling when all you asked for was clarity, if you've ever been labeled toxic for refusing to keep carrying someone who wouldn't carry themselves, if you've ever watched a partner let outside voices rewrite your role in their life, then I hope this story reminded you of something important. Walking away isn't cruelty. Saying no isn't punishment. And choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. If this story resonated with you, or if you've lived something similar, feel free to share it in the comments. You're not alone, and sometimes seeing our experiences reflected back at us is the first step toward trusting our own judgment again. And if you want more stories about boundaries, betrayal, and rebuilding from the inside out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take care of yourself.